you should go from here and not just talk about the weather and the football and what you've seen on television and everything else, and not just moan about things, but in an ideal world, people should be thinking and discussing what they hear from God. And this morning, we're going to look at some stuff that is, to me, it's mind-blowing. It has literally kept me awake a couple of nights this week. I'm going to do some heart surgery. So, believe you me, not in any medical sense. You wouldn't want me near anything to do with any medical part of your body. But heart in the sense of what the Bible means by heart, which is it's the center of our being. It goes very, very deep. And we're going to look at things, for example, we're looking at Judges 16, and it divides into 3 fairly straightforward sections. One is the danger of addiction and addictive behavior. The other is an unhealthy marriage. And the third is Gaza and what happened in Gaza. So the Bible is, as always, incredibly relevant. But as we go through this, the story of Samson has been a story of encouragement at one level, but also great puzzlement and great darkness. And we are going to set up a puzzle as we go, so you're going to have to stick with me, because the key to the puzzle doesn't come to the end. It is deeply uncomfortable. But unless you go deep, you won't see the light. You'll remain in the shadows. So I was greatly struck reading Dostoevsky, but I really do like Dostoevsky. I genuinely do. I'm not being pretentious. I just like the guy. In fact, I love him. And he says this: people don't want truth, they want comfort dressed as truth. That is a very profound insight. I think it's very true in the church as well, by the way. Franz Kafka, who I don't really like, but I thought he said this was great. He said this: reality is too heavy for most people to carry, so they borrow illusions, soft dreams, sweet lies, and they call it happiness. Reality is too heavy for most people to carry, so they borrow illusions, soft dreams, sweet lies, and call it happiness. The passage that we look at makes me feel uncomfortable. It should make you feel uncomfortable. But I hope, going back to the heart surgery, it's like the surgeon's knife. Or maybe I can put it this way: I got my flu jab this week. And it doesn't matter how much my mind tells me that the needle is not going to hurt. When I sat in the chemist, and I'm a big grown man, and this wee woman was sticking a needle in me, and I talked incessantly. I don't like needles, and I told her my life history with needles and how it was difficult to get blood out of me. And I'm sure she thinks, that crazy guy, I hope he never comes back here. I hope he finds another chemist. But I hate needles. The needle is, of course it's going to hurt you, but it's for good. And I think that what we look at, this may hurt actually, but it's for good. Another way of putting this, it's about 2 singers and 2 songs. One is this gentleman here, Tom Jones, Samson and Delilah. Now, every single older person will know My, Delilah, and we could burst into song, but we won't. It actually gets the story really wrong, because I saw the light on the night that I passed by her window. I saw the flickering shadow of love on her blind. She was my woman, as she deceived me. I watched and went out of my mind. My, Delilah, why, Delilah? I could see that girl was no good for me, but I was lost like a slave that no man could free. That bit is right. As we read the story of Delilah, you think, yeah, that's a really good description of what the Bible says. But the rest of the song goes on to say how he had a knife and went to get revenge on her. That bit wasn't so good. He didn't quite get it. But we'll have a song at the end that really does get it. So let's begin this chapter, Judges chapter 16. If you've got a Bible, you can see it there. The words are also up on the screen. One day Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her. the people of Gaza were told, "Samson is here." So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, "At dawn we'll kill him." But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up and took hold of the doors of the city gate, together with the 2 posts, and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. By the way, to understand that, that's a distance of 40 miles. Sorry, I think in miles. I can't work out kilometers yet, but 60 kilometers? So he carried them all that way. Now, what's going on here? Samson had done well, for the last 20 years. And then he does this. It's as though he's learned nothing. He returns to the Philistines, and he is Israel's judge. He is Israel's leader. And he returns right into the heart of their country in Gaza. And he goes to a prostitute in the enemy city. Now, he's a Nazarite, remember, set apart to be holy to God. And he goes to a prostitute. By the way, just notice this. There's an unbelievable tendency in our culture, and I'm not sure how strong it is here, but it's certainly very strong in the UK. And you don't say prostitute, you say sex work. And in the UK, there are even schools where at the careers thing, sex work is advertised. Which, if that's not grooming, I don't know what is. No, it's not work, and if you've seen Pretty Woman, that's not what prostitution is. That's an illusion. Prostitution is selling your body so that other people can use it. People who pay for it. Now, the vast majority of people who are in prostitution are women. I really, really like the Swedish approach, and I wish it was done here. They criminalize the men who purchase women, which I think is a great thing to do. And in Sweden, it's been very effective. It's interesting how we get a narrative in many of our newspapers and media kind of selling prostitution as a lifestyle. It's my body, my choice, I can do what I want. Really? If you have children, is that what you want your daughters to grow up to be? Of course not. But it is true, the Swedes got this, that the men who use prostitutes are as guilty, if not more guilty, than the women who prostitute themselves. And Samson does this. And yet he also still has this incredible strength. He carries this gate 40 miles. Now, I take a very particular lesson from this. For 20 years, Samson has been pretty successful. And this is a really good lifestyle tip, by the way, but it's a great tip in terms of the Christian life. The more successful you are, the more danger it is. I've been greatly distressed at Christian leaders who've fallen. And this is part of the problem here we have with Samson. How could God use Samson? How can he be cited in Hebrews as one of the men of faith when he was such a horrendous character and did such horrible things? Well, you can ask that question in another way. I think of a man who I met. He was in our house. I met many people who are greatly influenced towards Christianity and encouraged in their Christianity by him, Ravi Zacharias. Yet he led a double life. At the end of his life, people say, how could that be? How could that be? Well, one of the problems could simply be this. He probably started off really well and saw his ministry grow and develop. Then he became really successful, and then he fell. And I think that's clearly what happens here. Samson's heart used Samson's gains, what he got, to forget God. John Flavel, the Puritan, says this. The Puritans were great at one-liners. They would have been brilliant on Twitter. They wouldn't have been on Twitter, but they would have been brilliant if they would have been, if you understand what I'm saying. John Flavel says this: outward gains are ordinarily attended with inward losses. So you get a lot of money, you get promotion in your work, you get a new house, everything's going well for you. Do you thank God in the same way as you complained when you didn't have these things? or do you forget God? When good happens, we go, I deserve this. Of course. When bad happens, we go, what did I do? I don't deserve this. Now, part of this here is tied in with idolatry, and Tim Keller has been very helpful for me on this. In fact, the one thing that Tim Keller just kept hammering away at was this whole idea of idolatry and how our heart was a factory of idols, that we keep making idols. So I'm going to mention something just now in terms of idolatry, then I'm going to do something that I don't often do and give you a list. Look, idolatry is something that leads to addictive behaviors. I have, it's up there, my smartphone. The people who invented the smartphone, or rather the people who invented the software that goes with the smartphone, were utter geniuses. Why? Because they've made it supremely addictive. You see that with certain television programs, how addictive they can be. You know, you watch one, I got to watch the next one, I got to watch the next one, I got to watch the next one. And I do think that the smartphone and everything that goes along with it, we need to think about this a whole lot more carefully. There's a guy called Tony Payne. It's a great book on how your iPhone is changing you. And we do need to think about that. You deny that, well, the next time you're in a restaurant, look and see how many people are on their phones. You know? I look at it in church, and sometimes people say, I'm on my phone because I'm looking at their Bible. Well, that's good, as long as it's on silent mode and it's off Wi-Fi and on airplane mode, because you're going to be flying. You know, don't be checking texts or anything, because it's almost impossible. I get a ping. I got to see it. You know, and that's how we operate with that. Jonathan Haidt, the psychologist, says this. This is the great irony of social media. The more you immerse yourself in it, the more lonely and depressed you become. You ever thought of that? How antisocial social media is? Haidt also says this. Social media platforms create a fire hose of addictive content. TikTok is genius. It's absolute genius. I dare you to go on TikTok. Well, don't go on TikTok. But if you do go on TikTok, does anyone just look at one? Of course you don't. You look at the next one, the next one. They've got the algorithms, and they work out what you want, and they keep sending you them. Well, none of this is new. When I say with this checklist that I want to give to you, I want you each to understand I'm not having a go at anybody here. I went through this list from the Bible, and I would say that I ticked the box on several of these. And I'm not going to tell you which, because that's my business, not yours, and I have to deal with God with that. But it was quite challenging to do this. It's like you sit down with a surgeon, and those of you who are medical people, forgive me if this is not the way, but this is the way I think about it. And they'll ask you something beforehand. You know, what's your diet? What's your lifestyle? Have you got any issues? I mean, even going for the flu jab, I had to fill out a form. It wouldn't be Australia if you didn't have to fill out a form. You know, that's you get on a bus, you have to fill out a form. But I had to fill out a form saying, you know, did I have this? Did I have this? What ethnicity I was, and all the rest of it. Well, here's just a list for you. I'm not going to go into each one of them. We come across them all the time, and you'll hear me talk about them enough. Here are, I think, now, I'm going to give you 10. As Keller points out, there are thousands. And a lot of these are subsets of these 10. Number one is the one we've got here, sex and relationships. Why did Samson go to a prostitute? Because he wanted sex. He had an addiction that way. 1 Corinthians 6. Look, the Bible is unbelievably explicit about this stuff. And in churches, people go, no, don't mention all of that. You can't mention that. Well, why not? The Bible does, and I'm teaching the Bible. 1 Corinthians 6. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and unite them with a prostitute? Never. Or do you not know that the one who is united with a prostitute is one body with her? For it is written, the two will become one flesh. And what that is saying is, it's just saying, you're taking the sacred and you're making it sick and slutty and ugly and satanic. And sex and relationships can be incredibly addictive. Maybe some of you here, you couldn't help it. We're back again to the iPhone. It's one of the things is that it's made pornography accessible to everyone at all times. And you can get addicted to that. I remember once preaching and mentioning this, and 4 individual men afterwards who were not connected to each other came up and spoke to me afterward and said, and all of them Christian, said, that's my problem. I can't stop looking. Well, that's one addictive behavior. Another is family. How can family become an idol? Oh, very, very easy. Very, very easy. You can tell what people's idols are by what they get angry about. I'll tell you this, you go to a church and you criticize anyone's child. Well, if the mum don't get you, the granny will. You know, just, whoa, do not go there. You know, and yet what does Jesus say? If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. Family is a wonderful gift, but family can also be a terrible burden at times. And the Lord says, well, do you love me more than these? Jesus is not saying, you've got to hate your family. He's saying you've got to love me more than you love your family. Otherwise, your family is an idol. The third one, money and materialism. Matthew 6:24, you cannot serve both God and mammon. 1 Timothy 6:5, they think that godliness is a means to get rich. That's what is the perversion of prosperity theology, is the idea that you use God to get rich when you desire to get rich is setting up an idol. It's not wrong to be rich, but it is wrong to serve mammon, to serve money. And that's an idol for many of us. Number 4, work. Proverbs 23, do not overwork yourself to be rich. Have enough sense to know when to quit, for riches can vanish in a moment. People can become workaholics. People get their identity from work. Some of us with work, we struggle with it because what we do is we go along, we just get through the day, and we work in order to make a living. But for other people, their whole life and identity and meaning is caught up in work. It can become an idol. Number 5, politics. You can get so caught up. For those of you who disdain politics, you'll never understand this. For those of us who've been revolutionaries on the front and, all the rest of it, gone on marches and done banners, and those of us who are election geeks and sit up and watch elections in Tanzania overnight, we're just, we're really for the cause, and you can get really caught up in politics. And yet Psalm 146:3 says, do not put your trust in princes. I'm reading a book just now about the opposition to Hitler from within Germany. And virtually all of it came from Christians who said, we're not going to have Hitler as an idol. But Hitler controlled people because he was an idol. Power. Mark 10:42-43. Jesus says this, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their superiors exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must first be your servant. There are people for whom, and again, some of us may be this, control is what we want. We want control over ourselves. We want control over other people. We want to control every single aspect. And power becomes an idol. Number 7, sport and entertainment. I never thought in my life I would be able to say that there were people who love sport more than the Scots and English, but I've found it in Australia. And if you don't criticize children, whatever you do, don't criticize the knights. Don't, it's your ministry ruined here if you do that. Just applaud along with everyone else. But there's nothing wrong with sport, and there's nothing wrong with entertainment. But do not love the world, says 1 John 2, or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. If you cry to sleep at night because your team lost, but you never cry because your family is lost, then there's something wrong with you. Number 8, your body, the gym. I didn't tick this box, by the way, but my body is a temple. Think how much time you spend on your body. Good looks, muscles, and everything else. And yet we're told, 1 Timothy 4:8, bodily exercise profits little. He doesn't say it's not bad. He's not saying bodily exercise is bad. It's good to get exercise. But we can make it our God. In another way, gluttony. Philippians 3:19 talks about people whose God is their belly. they go out to sleep at night thinking about what they're going to eat in the morning. And then at breakfast, they're thinking, where am I going to get my lunch? And then during the day, they're thinking, what am I going to have to eat at night? And it just becomes, gluttony. It's funny, we don't really mention it as a sin so much nowadays, and yet it is. Number 9, substances. I mean by that, alcohol and drugs. Ephesians 5:18, do not be drunk with wine which leads to debauchery, but rather be filled with the Spirit. The Bible says that alcohol is a good gift from God. And drugs, in some ways, are a good gift from God. Again, if you're in hospital and you need an opiate painkiller, if I said to you I was once very thankful for heroin, it was because I was in a hospital in severe pain and had one of these things that you clicked and it pumps them into you to take away that pain. That's a good thing. But when you shoot up to muck around your mind, when you can't go through the day without alcohol or whatever, you have to think very, very carefully. I was thinking about William Wilberforce. He drank six glasses of wine a day, and that was just normal. Well, okay. But was he addicted? No, but I tell you what, he ended up being addicted to opium. Because in those days, they didn't think opium was bad, and it helped him with his pain and sleeplessness. And if you've ever seen the film Amazing Grace, you see the struggle he had to come off opium. We need to think about these things. What controls us? And religion. My last one is religion. Can religion be an idol? Yes, of course. That's the original concept of the term, where religious idols are set up in place of God. And we're not talking here about little Buddhas. I'm talking here about Christianity, where you can make your church into an idol. The whole point about all these things is, what we're looking at is that they're good, but they can become something else. It's a beautiful church building, but it could become your idol. The music is lovely, but it could become your idol. So many things could become our idol. In the old days, now I do not expect you to do this, in the old days in Scotland, at least in the Scottish Highlands, people would often have a photograph of their minister on their mantelpiece. Now I think this is a good habit that you should bring back. I went to share a flat with somebody, and he's now probably my best friend, but we didn't start well. We didn't really know each other, and I went in and I was making conversation. There was 2 photographs on the mantelpiece. One was his fiancée, and I said, "Is that your mother?" So that wasn't a good start. And then the other was a photograph of his minister in Glasgow, and I said, "Oh, is this where we have family worship? We bow down and But it was almost like that. Ministers were kind of idolized, and I know none of you are in danger of that. In fact, you're inclined to go to the opposite extreme, but just come back in the middle a little bit. But it was wrong. It's very interesting. Jeremiah 7 verse 4. Do not trust in these deceptive words. This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. You can make religion absolutely an idol. Romans 1:25. In all of these things, they exchange the truth of God for a lie. See, my heart is deceitful and your heart is deceitful. And we can recognize the idols in others, and we can see the idols that we don't have, but sometimes we just can't see the idols that we do have. And William Cowper, the poet, I think if I'd thought about it, we would have sung it today, but I think we will sing this next week because it's such a beautiful song, his song, "Oh, for a Closer Walk with Thee." He says this, "I hate the sins that made thee mourn and drove thee from my breast." And then this, "The dearest idol I have known, whate'er that idol be, help me to tear it from thy throne and worship only thee." Okay, that's 3 verses, and you're thinking, wow. Okay, time is relative. Let's look verses 4 to 22. Let's see what happens. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so that we may tie him up and subdue him. Each of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued." Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man." Then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. With men hidden in the room, she called out to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you!" But he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah said to Samson, "You made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied." He said, "If anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. Then with men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the ropes off his arms as if they were threads. Delilah then said to Samson, "All this time you've been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." He replied, "If you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pin, I'll become as weak as any other man." So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head, wove them into the fabric, and tightened with the pin. Again she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke from his sleep and pulled up the pin and the loom with the fabric. Then she said to him, "How can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. So he told her everything. "No razor has ever been used on my head," he said, "because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man." When Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, "Come back once more. He has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him, and his strength left him. Then she called, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke from his sleep and thought, "I'll go out as before and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. Binding him with bronze shackles, they set him to grinding grain in the prison. But the hair on his head began to grow after it had been shaved. Now, I'm not going to say a great deal about this, just you get the gist of it. This is a rotten marriage. It's based on manipulation and lust, not love. God is left out of it. It is not sacrificial, it is selfish. Delilah, by the way, her name sounds like the word for the night. Why did Delilah betray Samson? Number 1, because of money, but probably also because of fame. It was the rulers of the Philistines who came to him. She would be famous. Samson was their enemy. She would be honored. I have a second question. How could Samson be that stupid? You know, if my wife said to me, "What's your great strength?" And I said, "Oh, it's my hair." You know, if you braid my hair, well, maybe this is not going to work as an illustration, is it? No. You know, "Can I tie you up?" What? You know, you'd think he'd get it. And it happens 3 times. What? How does he not get that? Well, maybe he was hooked on danger. Maybe he loved playing games. Maybe he was in denial about her motives because he's so captivated with her. Maybe she was just brilliant at manipulation. I think that's probably the case. And of course, she threatened their relationship. "If you really love me, you would tell me." By the way, can I say that in a marriage? Never, ever do that. Ever. You start playing that kind of game, you're going to end up with all kinds of doubts and fears and troubles. Milton, in his poem Samson Agonistes, says this, how cunningly the sorceress displays her own transgressions to upbraid me mine. I think I want to say this. Keller talking about this says, in marriage, sometimes we look for a partner who builds up our own self-image. Or he warns about this, the helper syndrome, which is actually really important to get this. One person is needy and constantly in trouble. The other is the counselor and the rescuer. But both are using each other because, in the words of Meatloaf, I want you, I need you, but there ain't no way I'm ever going to love you. Now don't be sad, because 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Well, you should be sad, because we can use other people to bolster ourselves or to prove ourselves. And what Keller points out is we actually need the love of God in our hearts so that we can truly love others. Because we do manipulate each other. Of course we do. And Samson gets it so wrong. Chapter 16, verse 20, he says, I'll go out as before. God has always rescued him. Why should this time be any different? He believed that the strength was his, that it was not really in his hair. To the Philistines, they believed it was in his hair. To Samson, it was just me. He forgot that his strength wasn't from his hair. His strength was from God. And maybe I'll ask this question, then we're going to sing something before we finish with looking at the last bit. I'll ask this question whether you believe in magic or whether you believe in Christian magic. Because an awful lot of Christians believe in Christian magic. What do I mean by that? If I say this prayer, if I attend this church, if I do this Bible study, if I meet with this person, if I push the button, God will automatically respond. That's not how it works. It's not how it works. So we're going to sing Psalm 38, which is a song of confession and pain. And then we're going to see, that's all the dark side of it. Then we're going to see, it may seem dark what comes, but it's actually not. And I'll explain why before we finish. But let's stand and sing Psalm 38, part of it anyway. Have a seat. And let's read the last bit of Samson's story. And I think this section is why he's mentioned in Hebrews. From verse 23, now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god and to celebrate, saying, our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, our God has delivered our enemy into our hands, the one who laid waste our land and multiplied our slain. While they were in high spirits, they shouted, bring out Samson to entertain us. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. Milton's poem has a beautiful line about Samson at this point. He says, O mirror of our fickle state. He's saying Samson's like us. The Philistines celebrate. They rejoice. We've won. Dagon, our God, has won. But the Philistines knew nothing of the God who does the unexpected. Ehud, whose strength was made perfect in weakness. Michael Wilcox, sorry, I'm quoting this man called Michael Wilcox. Ehud, whose strength is made perfect in weakness. Gideon, a God who never breaks his word. The God who said that Samson would be a Nazirite to the day of his death, chapter 13, verse 7. His abandonment of his servant could not but be temporary. See, when the hair was shaved off, that was the end of you as a Nazirite. But God had said, no, you're going to be a Nazirite to the end. The promise was to hold, however, Samson might despise it. There is grace abounding to the chief of sinners. As 2 Timothy 2:13 says this, if we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. God had said, you're going to be a Nazirite to the end. Samson screwed everything up. God said, you're going to be a Nazirite to the end. Some of us as Christians, we've really screwed up bad and we think there's no way back. Yeah, there is. There absolutely is. Because the devil doesn't win. Dagon doesn't win. So they bring out Samson. We read this. When they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple so that I can lean against them. Now the temple was crowded with men and women. All the rulers of the Philistines were there, and on the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Let me say something about that. This is only the second time that it's recorded that Samson prayed. Your Christian life is going to be a mess if you don't pray. And also note this. This is a different Samson. This is a humble, repentant, weak, blind Samson who looks and is a mess, but he's blind, but now he's beginning to see. And this is not just a prayer for revenge. This is a prayer for God to fulfill the purpose which Samson was supposed to do. Then Samson reached towards the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood. Bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other, Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. Then his brothers and his father's whole family went down to get him. They brought him back and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah, his father. He had led Israel 20 years. Now, you will see the similarities between Samson and Christ. Can you not see it? There's a shadow of Christ's death here. Keller again points this out in great detail. I won't go into great detail, but I'll just mention some things. Both Samson and Jesus were betrayed by someone who'd acted as a friend, Delilah and Judas. And they were both betrayed for money, and they were both handed over to the Gentile oppressors, and they were both tortured and chained, and they were both put on public display to be mocked. They were both asked to perform, though Jesus didn't perform. Both died with arms outstretched, and both appeared completely struck down by their enemies, yet both in their death crushed their enemy. On the cross, Jesus brought the power of Satan to nothing, disarming him. Colossians 2, verse 15, talks about that the cross is what defeated the enemy. The cross takes away the penalty for idolatry. I mentioned all these idolatrous things. And if you think the message is, right now, I now have to go and get rid of these and then I'll be okay, the answer is no, you can't get rid of them. What you need is to get rid of the penalty for them, which is what Christ did on the cross, and you need to get rid of the power of idolatry over your own heart, which Christ on the cross, through his Spirit, brings. In Samson, we have, more than any of the other judges, the picture of victorious defeat, rejected, beaten, chained, all alone, and dying under an avalanche of his enemies, yet he triumphed. And David Jackman, I love what he says. This is just beautiful. Samson is a strong man who's revealed to be weak, but the story ends with a weak man who was stronger than he ever was before. And that is the gospel. Jesus became weak in order to save us. Now, Samson dies, his rule's over. Jesus dies, the story's only just begun. I would suggest if you don't go deep and search your heart for idolatry, then you're never going to get to the Christ of the cross, because you're never going to see the need for the cross. Christ died to free us from our addictions and to enable us to live sacrificial lives for others. So, this is the verse. I've been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Galatians 2:20. That should be the verse for every believer, and we should be wanting to make it the center and the reality of our lives. And I thought I would end with a beautiful story, for me anyway, and I hope for you, of an example of that. You may know of the singer Moya Brennan. She died 2 weeks ago. She would have been about 70. You probably know better Clannad. She was the lead singer of Clannad. Her sister was actually Enya. I mean, two of the most extraordinary, beautiful singers in the world. Now, Brennan, in the height of her success, had an abortion. And it nearly destroyed her. She then got married, and it was a short-lived marriage, and she had a miscarriage. And she believed that the miscarriage was a punishment for the abortion. In 1991, she married a photographer, an English guy called Tim Jarvis, and they remained married for the rest of their lives. They had 2 children, Aisling and Paul, both of whom became musicians. But something extraordinary happened to Brennan. Her life was empty. She was addicted to many different things. And then one day, she picked up in an aunt's house an old prayer book. There's an article in the Independent, Irish Independent, which describes this, and I found it very moving. And because of that prayer book, she became a Christian. She said about her abortion that it left her feeling really, really empty on the inside, and contributed to a period of deep unhappiness, heavy drinking, and drug use. She called this period the dark years, where she was outwardly enormously successful, selling 40 million records. But that caused her to reevaluate and to come to Christ. When she spoke, she was not afraid to speak about what she had done, what had happened to her. She said it was a source of profound regret and inner pain, which she carried for years before finding forgiveness and healing through Christ. She became an advocate for women in crisis pregnancies, encouraging compassion and support and not condemning people. But she spoke often about the long-term emotional toil she herself had experienced because of what she had done. When you know that story and you then listen to some of her later songs, she has a Gaelic version, for example, of Psalm 67, which is stunning. But I'm going to play this. I won't often do this, but I'm going to play this because it summarizes what I'm trying to say in this. It's a song called Perfect Time. I'm not afraid, teach me to learn your ways. Carry me under your wings in your perfect time. I know you told me I'm not alone. You know I couldn't do it on my own. See, my eyes are older now. Broken dreams behind. Fill my heart with precious love. I know it's there to find. I know forgiveness is the key, not pride. I want to heal this pain I hide inside. Free my fears and promise me that you won't let me go. Teach me to learn your ways. Carry me under your wings in your perfect time. You're the one to comfort me because the past, my God, you know. This concept, I've been thinking about it all week, this concept of perfect time. God has a perfect time. And I'll tell you what, we'll hear the song and then I'll pray and we'll finish with a couple of other things. Let's hear the song.